Everyone, good to see you here. We will give 2 more minutes for folks to join, and then we'll start at 5 past the hour. Thank you so much for being here on time, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion with you this afternoon. And I think the rest that will join us while we're in flight. So good afternoon and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. It is my distinct pleasure to host a good friend of mine and really one of the foremost professionals in terms of the technology space with vast experiences across industries. I'm not going to do as good a job as he is in terms of introducing himself, but I thought that maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about Peter. So Peter Mungai joins us from Prudential Africa, and he is the Chief Transformation Officer at Prudential Africa. And being the Chief Transformation Officer means that he leads a lot of the technology and transformation and, I suppose, digitization initiatives across Prudential Africa's businesses in 8 countries. I don't know what countries those are, and maybe Peter, you'll tell us a little bit about that, because our cohort here is an Africa cohort, so we've got a good representation from the continent. Before that, Peter used to be at Kenya Airways, where he was the director of the Enterprise Project Management Office, and the director of transformation and the head of IT operations, as well as the acting chief information officer for a few years. In that role, he led a lot of digital transformation initiatives and innovation initiatives for the airline. And I think that, there's a couple of things under his belt there that he's super proud of, and we'll get to hear him tell us a little bit about that as well. The reason why I asked Peter to join us today is particularly and more specifically in the insurance industry is that it's really difficult for just, start go it alone, right? It is one industry where there's a huge requirement for some level of partnership. And we've seen this not play out exceptionally well in other industries where it's competitive and people are really sabotaging each other, particularly between the incumbents vis-a-vis the startups that are innovating in that space. And so we think that it's super important that as far as the insurance sector is concerned, that as much as possible as BimaLab would really like to create and forge relationships and potential partnerships with traditional carriers and really allow the insurtechs that we work with to learn from the experiences of the traditional carriers. And there's a huge amount of experience sitting in that space. But at the same time, really allow the traditional carriers to then learn from the insurtechs and really gain from some of that agility and innovation thinking that we're seeing happening in the insurtech space, and essentially hope to create what I would refer to as potentially a win-win relationship for everybody. And so to have Peter today, who's representative of an African insurer, is really wonderful. So I'm going to stop there anyway, and I'm going to ask you, Peter, just to tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey over the years, and then a bit more around what you kind of do at Prudential today, and then we'll take the discussion from there going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I think you did a very good job of giving an intro about myself. Some of the things you speak about, I think I may have forgotten about some of them. First and foremost, I'm Kenyan, and I'm a family man with 2 beautiful children. That is number 1. Number 2 is my professional journey. I always feel that me as an individual comes first in terms of the things that matter in life. Now, I think, Tony, you've talked about some of the things that I did, but I think I'll walk from where I am right now, walk backwards, just to give a brief synopsis. I'm new to the insurance industry, and I think I told you that, Tonya. I'm new. I just joined Prudential Insurance last year in June, so just a little over a year and 5 months. And I'm excited about what I'm seeing. It's an exciting industry because it hasn't transformed as many other industries have. So obviously the opportunity to really make an impact is quite rife. We'll talk about some of the challenges that are in existence that I've seen from where I am. So I can't claim to be an expert in this industry. I'm also learning, and this journey is also a learning experience for myself as well. So before that, I was in Kenya Airways. I think Tonya's talked about some of the key things I was doing. Some of the things that I did do was transform the whole airport for Kenya, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. I made it a digital airport, put self-service into that space when self-service was beginning to become mainstream that I did, and also clearly operationalize the airport as from an airline perspective. The biggest challenge in that whole space is that you had to work with competitors. So it's about collaborating with other airlines and the airport authority, which are all distinct entities that are competing with the airport as the center that connects with everybody. So getting all the airlines on board was actually the biggest challenge. At the end of the day, any transformation that you want to 99% of the time touches on people, and changing people is always going to be the difficult thing. We'll talk more about that later on. But it's about getting people together, getting the collaboration, which is similar, I think, to what you're talking about in this particular instance, where how can we get the insurtechs, the upcoming insurtechs, and the traditional players to come together to deliver service for customers. So in that particular instance, I was quite proud of the work that I did, getting the airlines to come together and working with the airport and putting a very strong proposition that we could work together to make that impact. So that's one of the key things that I'm really proud of in that particular space. And since then, the downtimes have been minimized at the airport. Moving back to insurance. Now, I think I did mention that I am new in the space and I'm doing a lot of learning, but I can speak to the things that I'm seeing. Obviously, as I work on trying to bring obviously baseline technologies to across our businesses in 8 African markets. Those are Kenya, Uganda, Zambia, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon. Yeah, those 3, and Togo. Sorry, and Togo. That's 8 countries. And the way Prudential, which is a British company, it's 175 years in this industry, has got a big footprint in Asia and now in Africa, and that is the focus that the company is taking. When they bought back into the businesses here in Africa, these are all companies that were already running on their own, and it's only since 2021, when they really started trying to bring them back into the fold, ensure that security, infrastructure, and the application estate is all similar in a converged state with what's happening in Asia. So that's when I came on board, and that's what I'm working on right now, driving that convergence agenda, ensuring that it is fit for purpose for the businesses in their markets. That is something that we also talk about, because as you're coming up with solutions, you've got to be key. You got to put a keen eye on what the market is all about, and ensuring that whatever solutions you're delivering is fit for purpose in that particular market. So that's what I'm doing, running to try and bring in core insurance application systems, as well as of ensuring that the infrastructure is in place, and obviously IT service management, the traditional IT. But as far as transformation is concerned, that's the journey that I'm undertaking. It is a difficult role, a difficult job, but I'm up for the task, and I've got a beautiful team. I've got a good team on board, and even within the businesses, they are really excited about moving in that direction. Tony, I think that gives a quick, brief synopsis of who I am and where I am, and maybe we can make this interactive.
Yes, thank you. No, and thank you for sharing that. And I kind of took note of the countries that you're doing work in. So I kind of want to dig in a little bit to understand and kind of tease out the lessons that the folks on this call can pick up from this conversation. And I just want to mention for the BimaLab cohort, if you have any question, please feel free to type it into the chat window, and I'll be able to moderate that, or you can put up your hand and unmute yourself when I call on you and ask any questions you may have. I've got a couple of questions to kind of kick off the discussion. So couple of things I picked up while you were talking there, Peter. You touched on one, I think you talked about collaboration, and you talked about people. And so my first two questions will touch those two elements. So I'm curious to know, today, the team that you have at Prudential that's taking care of this innovation agenda from an African standpoint, what's your take in terms of the kind of skills that you're seeing in the market? And what would you encourage founders on this call to think about when they're building up their own teams to pursue the agenda that they're pursuing for themselves right now? So kind of from the top of your mind, what are the 2-3 things that you look for? You're playing within the same space, which is insurance. We're looking at an innovation journey. So what are some of the best practices that you apply in terms of pulling your team together that our founders could learn from?
Okay, I don't think there's a silver bullet to that answer, but I will speak to the current context, and obviously that needs to be applied to whatever space that you're working in. In my context, obviously, talking about ensuring that the infrastructure and security is taken care of. Obviously, I'd have somebody in infrastructure, network engineer, a really top end and double CCIE engineer, to ensure that we're putting the right things around infrastructure, ensuring that either the data centers or the move towards the cloud is taken care of. So as far as that is concerned, a cloud engineer to help drive and steer that strategy. But then when you talk about the application estate, from where I'm coming from, strong application people are needed to ensure that we are getting the right solutions for the businesses. You need to have business analysts to ensure that they're able to articulate what the business need is to drive that particular agenda. And then thereafter, obviously, then you talk about having a transformation team that is really now looking at how we can try and innovate and try and drive some of the things that are in place. And that's the journey that I'm taking. Next on the agenda, once I get the base, the core application in place, then we're talking about data. And data has got to be really top of mind for anybody who's going to try and do some sort of transformation. You've got to harness the power of data. Now, we're not quite there yet. We get the foundations in place. And then obviously that is going to be my next key focus. And I'm going to be driving that, trying to get as much in as far as machine learning, AI, to really start driving things like underwriting, or get the base applications that have got capabilities in that particular space. So it all depends on what you're trying to get into, and obviously pick the right resources that you need when driving a solution. But if you're looking at the future from this cohort, from what you've been able to see, Tonya, things that are going to harness around data is going to be key.
Sorry, I'll come back to it because you talked about machine learning, AI, and I want to understand how you want to or what Prudential's approach is to partnerships in the startup space. But I see Jeremy has his hand up, and so I want to allow Jeremy to ask his question. Good to see you, Jeremy.
Good to see you, and good to see you again, Peter. It's been a while. We had some chat a while ago.
You guys know each other?
Been back a while, but I think we never met in person, but I think on emails.
Yes, we do.
I think
good to see you, Jeremy.
So Peter, I've got a question for you. So I mean, of course, BimaLab is all about hungry insurtechs trying desperate for business and looking to partnership across kind of Africa. I think we're now across kind of 8 countries at the moment. So in terms of Prudential, what is your view around the whole kind of open insurance kind of paradigm? There's been a big thrust around open banking, where you enable access to data for fintechs to operate with banks in obviously a managed environment. So in the case of insurance, it's less evolved, I guess you could say. But what is your view of the kind of open insurance kind of paradigm, where you allow space for insurtechs to operate integrated your platforms, against a closed model where, say, for Prudential would have one core command and control platform or kind of operations? I'm trying to be interested to understand what your view is and how you're seeing that evolve now as you find your feet within the Prudential space.
All right, I think to answer that question, tackle it in 2 parts. One, you've got to understand the market, okay? And this is getting to what I've been able to see within Africa, and also what I've seen in Asia. I do have a lot of our businesses, our headquarters is in Asia right now, in Hong Kong and Singapore. And obviously I interact with a lot of the players in that particular space. Insurance is typically, in our market, a sold commodity. You've got to sell it. So you've got the agents in that particular space, the brokers selling insurance. We've not reached the point where some of the more advanced markets where people are actually asking for it, and you have people with multiple policies. You will see that here, but it's not the mainstream. You don't see that quite often. But out there, it's a lot different. So obviously being able to, when you're in a market where it's more advanced, where people are asking for the insurance and they want to look at the products and understand what they are, they're more literate about insurance. So, and we're talking about things like life or home insurance, where there's no mandate that you have to have it. In cases where you've got things like legislation driven, so like car insurance, and so on and so forth, then it's simple. Anybody will go online and be able to look for a good policy for themselves and then go from there. But things like life is pretty much sold. So in cases where you've got people that are asking, then it's easy to do direct to customer. That's digital offerings do come into play. That's where insurtechs can really thrive. But in these markets where you're dependent on the brokers, it's really critical to know that you're dependent on them. And I was going to try and keep this particular topic to later on, but I'll speak about it right now. The airline industry and the insurance industry have something very in common. They're both driven by third parties. Third parties meaning agents, brokers. And if you try and bypass that, it can have serious repercussions. Now in Europe, this is just about the airline industry, and I'll come back to insurance. In Europe, they're more advanced. Customers have become more digital. They want to go online. That's why you've got all these aggregators that have Expedias that are able to provide offerings for the customers. So that customers move on their own. If you try and do that here, and there's a case study, I won't talk about it right now because I don't want to name the airline. Try to bypass that ahead of its time, and the agencies and the brokers pushed back. And that airline took a number of years before they were able to recover from that particular space, because they own the customer. And it's about being able to ensure that you don't rock that boat too much. You can grow organically and go into that particular space, but it's not an easy journey. The insurance industry is similar to that, especially here for things like life, where it is the agents and the brokers that really own the customer. So directed customer has to be taken carefully, has to be treated carefully. So it's important as you're coming into that particular space is to know what your market is, what the appetite is. You tend to find that it is the youth, the younger generation that are more digital and would be keen to go online. But the demographic is not the one that is looking to buy life insurance. So that is the challenge, the paradigm that you've got to try and overcome in that particular space. So it's the older generation, the people who are getting older, who are buying more life products. Now, back to your question about open. We'll definitely be open in that particular space, because ultimately, as an insurance company, we're looking to try and get as many customers as possible. So we use brokers, we use agents. If we can get anybody walking in or going onto our platforms to buy an insurance policy, that'd be great. So any opportunity to widen that footprint is most welcome. And so for the young insurtechs, the startups that are coming into place, as far as a traditional carrier is concerned, traditional insurance is concerned, if you're able to bring more customers to us, that's a plus. So yeah, there's no way we'd be pushing back against that. But you've got to think about who you're working with and the context within the brokers and the agencies in the industry.
Sure, I don't know. I mean, I have to say, I agree with you. In terms of the market, and I think South Africa is a good example of that. I think like 20 years ago, it was absolutely 90% of it was kind of brokers and agents, and then you've seen a significant do now bank assurance and alternative distribution models. So that market share is probably now around 20%, if I'm trying to remember the picture now. And I guess a lot of markets will shift there. I mean, on our side, just to clarify, we're a B2B to C, because we also believe in the model you have to go through distribution players, so telcos. So you say from Kenya, we just launched on Safaricom, for example, where when you buy data or and Google Maps, you also buy your insurance product. So we'll leverage your distribution partners to access that market. And I guess that's where, looking at these insurtechs, I think quite a few other insurtechs are also playing in that space, where they bring kind of agile digital technology to delight customers through linking of other products or services. And again, that's where the kind of question is around, how does that link into, I guess, an insurance company like Prudential's vision of leveraging the technology and IP and the agility of insurtechs compared to wanting to control it within their own kind of their own space. And I guess it's not always easy to pass the various kind of operating committee boards within the companies. But thanks, Peter.
No, you're very right, and I think you've touched on a very important point right there. Embedded insurance, the ones where you're buying a commodity and there's an insurance in there. That is a space that is growing. That's what I see, that people are getting involved in a particular avenue to be able to get insurance as part of a service that you're purchasing. You mentioned the telcos, and yes, M-Pesa, the M-Pesa mall in Kenya is one such that we're seeing, where as a telco, they've got a mall where different players can come in there and sell their products. But again, leveraging on their reach, they've got a couple of million subscribers that are constantly on that platform, and we've got a presence in that particular space in this market. And you're seeing a lot of that growing across Africa right now, and that is really an interesting space to look into. They're selling more smaller products, bite-sized products, what do you call them? So that is really a space. And as that progresses and people start understanding what insurance is, you will see the products becoming more complex. And at some point, they'll have to come in and talk to somebody. That way, an underwriter would have to put their pen on the paper somewhere.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I see Benro has a question that's probably a follow-up to Jeremy's question. I want to tuck one in here as well, particularly on open insurance models. For you, Peter, data privacy concerns, how much does that play a role? And is that something that needs to be taken into consideration? Benro's smiling. I don't know if that was the question.
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Tonya, you pulled that out of my mouth. So I think interacting a lot with the insurers, data concerns is always big on the topic of who we're partnering, especially with technology. So I wanted to get Peter's thoughts in terms of how we startups can think about navigating that landscape. So what's the ideal scenario for an insurer that takes into consideration their own data and privacy concerns?
Yeah, data privacy is a very, very serious area, and forget about even just partnering with insurtechs or any other space. Data considerations are really critical, and for Prudential, there is no compromising in that particular space. So the advent of GDPR, that's where it really started. And again, I've got the history from the airline industry, and that when GDPR was launched, it's set across the globe around data privacy and the penalties that come into that particular space. To put it into context, so you know the kind of rigor that is being put into that is one breach in any organization. I'll talk about Prudential as an example. One breach in any country, Kenya, Ghana, wherever it is, one customer, that is an EU citizen, for example, the penalty is 4% of your turnover that year. Now, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So a lot of effort has gone into that particular space. So anything that's going to expose our customer data is going to be a challenge. Now, if you're coming on board as an insurtech that's bringing customers to us, obviously you're the aggregator, you're the agency that's bringing customers to us. Obviously, then we have to ensure that the linkage between ourselves and yourselves is really taken care of. And we have a huge team that takes care of that. We've driven data management, data governance across all our businesses as a very serious endeavor that reports directly to the CEO of that particular business. So it is really is something that needs to be taken seriously. And if you're going to enter that space, definitely focus on that your systems are secure, that you've got a full understanding of how your customer information flows, linking into our systems. Because obviously, as an insurer, once you bring us, we are now a processor as well. And so now we are liable. So it's important that that is taken very seriously.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Peter. I mean, so does that mean that you, as an sitting on the insurer side and heading transformation, you'd rather maintain a lot of your solutions in-house? I build and manage those processes in-house so that you're in control of the data, right? As opposed to partnering with a third-party provider. How do you find the balance? If you're going to partner with a third-party provider, what are the kind of things you'd like to see, or that would convince you that their data protection, or that they're ready for, or they're serious about GDPR?
Yeah, I don't think it's an element of preference. I mean, granted, if we've got the system and we get our customers ourselves, then so be it. And we've got more controls on a system that are within our estate. But if there's a partnership, and partnerships are there, I mean, I believe there are lots of partnerships that are being built. We've got a whole commercial team that's driving partnerships. When the partnership is being engaged and being discussed, by the time we get into pen to paper, I mean, there is a team that comes in and understands exactly how the data is going to flow. So no, we're not averse to partnerships. I was just ensuring that the technology on the partner side has a seamless link into ours. We understand exactly where things are and protect the data, and make sure that you've got your own data governance structures and you're focused on ensuring that customer data is protected. And it protects both of them.
Got it. Maybe some context about what we do and the angle I'm asking for, right? So we're building solutions to help the insurers digitize. So today we partner with AXA in Nigeria and automate their claims solution to claims end-to-end. So what that means is that where our solution sort of their data passes through our solution. For AXA, some of our other partners, we try to find their own comfort zone. Some partners want us to already cloud enabled, and in that case, we can host the solution on their own servers. So in such a situation where we were kind of like an infrastructure partner, how easy is it a sell for someone like Prudential, who's multi countries, has someone like you with a lot of experience on GDPR? Would you rather be like, guys, let's hire an engineering team, build this in-house, as opposed to partner with a company who do this white label? And yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting question. From where I'm sitting right now, okay, so where I am today is trying to get, I think I walked my journey earlier on, trying to get the core application in place, and then we can talk about the partnerships, I mean, and looking at things like data and AI down the road. But I'll just give you my views from what I've seen happening in some of the other parts of Prudential in the more advanced markets. There is opportunity for insurtechs or for partnerships to come in and work. But the rigor that is taken, I mean, there is a architectural council that any solution that's coming into Prudential has to go through. And there's like 11 different points that touch on different aspects of the application that's coming on board, security, ensuring data is managed really well. If our data is going to sit elsewhere, there's extra scrutiny that goes into that, obviously. But you can't ignore the fact that data can be managed outside of your estate. But it's about ensuring that that is really opened up and understood. So if that's going to be the case here in Africa, if we do get to that particular space, there's going to be a lot of rigor into understanding exactly what is being done, where is it sitting, which cloud is it sitting on, Do we have an understanding of what the architecture looks like? And so there's a lot of work that goes into that particular space. So, I mean, I would have to understand what the context is a little more. But yeah, I'll just tell you that there's a lot of rigor that goes into ensuring that data protection is achieved. And obviously, if it's sitting within our estate, we've got more control. So yeah, but in some cases, like what you just talked about right now, where you as a partner with a traditional insurer, you're going to be processing some of their data. I'm sure there must have been a lot of rigor that went into that.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah, so it's the same. But it just raises more eyebrows when they know, when the Architectural Council knows that our data is sitting elsewhere. A lot more questions are asked. There's a whole new file that's opened up to ask the right questions to ensure that we understand exactly where the customer data is going to be sitting.
Thanks a lot. Very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Benro and Jeremy. Good discussion there. And I think it's a good kind of segue into what would essentially be somewhat the heart of this conversation. And I am sure, Peter, you can tell that the conversation is very much driven towards if I was to kind of put it in a one sentence framework, we've got a number of startups on this call, and obviously they would love to work with an institution such as Prudential. What advice would you give them? Is there any set of criteria that they must meet if they engage at Prudential, or is there a set of, for you, factors that you consider before you start to engage in partnerships with entities such as the ones on the call? Just kind of your reflection around a little bit of, assuming that, Prudential's journey includes partnering with startups. What does that look like, and how can they play with Prudential?
Okay, it's a very good question, and I think it's come at the right time in the discussion. So, as a traditional insurer, and I think this cuts across the industry, there's two key things we're trying to achieve. One is get more customers. Okay, so if you're able to find a way of being able to bring more customers to us, that's a plus. We'll be definitely open to doing that in whatever different spaces, whatever avenue you're able to do that. That will always be welcome. We're looking for more customers. But two is to reduce our operational cost. So if you've got solutions that can assist us to reduce our operational cost, then that'll also be welcome. So those are two key areas that I would see are areas that would definitely be most welcome to a fair. Now, obviously, that goes into various different rabbit holes, so to speak. Operational costs, talking about AI, talking about predictive analytics, looking at being able to do automated underwriting. Some of these things obviously take away the costs that are associated with having people driving that particular aspect of the business. You're able to shorten the time it takes to be able to process a policy, to come up to a decision. That would definitely be key. And that's more on the operational side, where we're reducing costs and the overheads that we are enduring. But when you talk about being able to bring in customers, I can assure you that is always an area that our commercial team is always constantly looking to reach out to different players out there. We talk about, for example, I think we talked about embedded insurance. If you're able to come up with a product that you're able to convince a producer of a widget, let's call it a widget for now, and the need to have an insurance part and parcel of that, and you come to a traditional insurer, that becomes easy money, so to speak. So we're definitely being open to that sort of thing. But I'll only ask that, I mean, I don't want to try and dampen, but you've got to just think about the lay of the land and obviously the agencies and the brokers. That is always going to be a problem, if you ask me. And it's about being able to navigate that. If you come up with something brand new, then by all means, that is definitely a journey. And one of the things that the industry, and this is probably just a factor of time, needs to be able to impress on customers, whether through marketing or through awareness, the importance of some of these insurance products. so that the customers start looking for these things to get us to the point where the more advanced markets are, where people are actually asking for stuff. That is when insurtechs will gain a serious boom, because then digital products, digital engagements with customers, direct to customer, definitely has a home to be able to provide an avenue for the insurtech.
Thank you. So I'm curious to know, currently, and you mentioned about more advanced markets, and obviously as Prudential, you have the benefit of having a significant operation in Asia. And I presume those are some of the more advanced markets you're speaking to. Is there anything that you think that insurtechs in Africa can learn from the Asian market? Is it like where are they outperforming us? Is it the type of solutions? Is it the amount of time they spend in understanding their customer? Is it that the carriers there, the traditional carriers such as yourselves, are more open to partnerships, and together they're really growing and scaling in the market? What's your take in terms of what can we pick up from markets like that?
Now, I can't claim to know too much about what the insurtechs are doing on that side, but some of the things that we talked about in here around aggregation, embedded insurance, those are some of the things that I am seeing from afar. But one of the things I can do, and I'm totally open to doing this, is getting to get more homework and sharing with you, and you can share with the cohort if that works for yourself. But the one area that I do know when it comes to things like predictive now, that could be done by the insurance itself to get predictive and to be able to put a platform in place to understand more of your to understand your our customers better, to come up with solutions that are tailor crafted for the customer. When you get into that particular space, then that's some of the things that I see my peers are talking about in Asia. They have the ability to do that. Here we're still in the journey towards, obviously, first of all, getting our base applications or core applications in place, moving towards the whole data management, understanding our customers. We implemented CRM, so obviously having a foothold to be able to understand more what our customers are doing, and obviously servicing them a lot better. But there's opportunities out there, and if you allow me, I'll get back to you and share what I do see. Right now, I've just got my head focused on trying to just get the foundations in place and growing from that perspective.
Okay, no, I get you.
But the principles I spoke about earlier still stand. Things that will focus on operational efficiencies and customer acquisition will always have a home in insurance.
Yeah. I took that down. It's just reducing costs, increasing revenue. If your solution is able to do one or both of those, they should come knock on your door. People will be willing to listen. Is that right? Okay, very good. Okay, so a couple more questions, and I want to ask the audience, if you've got any questions, please put up your hand. This is really designed to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like an opportunity for you to explore and see where and how you can with or play with the insurance carriers. So please put up your hand if you have additional questions. So I was curious, particularly with regards to we talked a little bit about, and I said we'd come back to it, particularly around collaboration and elements like that. In your view, particularly when you think of the startups on this call, and I teed up the conversation by saying that in my heart, I truly believe that there's an opportunity for, the insurance carriers to learn from the insurtech startups and vice versa. Are there any, and I'm inviting you to think out loud around how can we do this a lot better as the broader insurance segment? Are there any initiatives that you've observed Prudential either being involved in or that you think that we could create within an African context? Our big challenge in Africa is not that there isn't enough market. In fact, this is a space where there's serious underpenetration of insurance in the market, meaning that there's significant opportunity out there. Are there opportunities for traditional carriers to collaborate with the insurtech ecosystem to go to market, whether it's from a customer education standpoint, just things that then start to light up the conversation around solutions driven by technology for this sector? What's your take on that?
That's a very good question. Obviously, opportunities are endless, and people do have the freedom to think and come up with things around any particular space in any industry. For insurance in Africa, things that obviously educate the customer and start driving that narrative that insurance is important, obviously would definitely change the things. But who's going to do that without having some form of being able to get a returns? And don't forget, insurance is also a factor of GDP. If people have money, they've got extra cash to put it for insurance. If people are focused on just the basics, back to Maslow's hierarchy, then insurance is the first to fall to the wayside. And we're seeing some of those things happening right now. The middle class, a growing middle class will definitely grow the insurance industry. That's why the more advanced markets with much larger middle class are definitely in that particular space where they are seeking out insurance products and thinking about the future. Now with the economic downturn from COVID, of course, now in Ukraine, and now there's a brand new one that just started this week, that is going to have a huge impact. Because when things become difficult for people in general, insurance is pretty much one of the first ones that they drop. Paying the premiums is pretty much the first one. And that is always going to be a problem. So the macroeconomic factors are much larger than just educating people, although educating people is very important, but you have to educate people that have the cash. Now, there is a middle class, which is what is driving a lot of the life policies across the continent. And that is one of the areas that obviously we need to keep an eye on. But there's other creative ways that you could potentially be able to engage with customers to be able to ensure that you build that story, that narrative, which the agents do right now. The agents go and sell the insurance and they tell the story of why it's important. And someone's like, wow, okay, yes, I need to think about that. It's not going to be the traditional. When I do pass away, now there's a Harambe, there's a collection of getting the family together to friends and family to chip in to take care of funeral costs of the life of my children, or the education of the children. That's where those policies come in and people start understanding. So products or solutions or engagements that will drive that narrative to really educate people is obviously going to be a huge one. But there is no monopoly to what people can do. And I'd be curious to know what these insurtechs, the guys in this call, are thinking of. And obviously, I'd always encourage you to always protect your IP. That's one of the things that I see happening a lot. People come up with an idea and it starts. Is a whole innovation initiative within Prudential that is looking at partnerships and seeing what can be done, A, from within and B, from the outside. Now, this has been driven from Asia, but it's our focus to also bring it here. So be curious to know what people are doing. Let us sign the NDAs, totally open to doing that. But it's important that we do get a chance to understand what's happening out there. I have no monopoly on ideas. And I'm still new in the market, but it'd be curious to know what's happening in other markets as well. And please do share. Be open to understanding what we can do together.
Mm. Okay, so I'll take that as an open invitation. I think everyone's heard that. You're open to learning and hearing. I liked when you talked about what's, that whole partnerships, insurtechs and so on in Asia. And obviously we believe that you're a strong advocate for the African continent as far as that's concerned. And anything we can do to make you shine, I think we're all behind you 100%. I have one last question for you. Sorry, I missed that.
To make us all shine. And make the continent.
I have one last question for you, and you kind of alluded to it. When we talk insurtech, particularly in an African context, it's not, insurtech solutions necessarily for your cat at home. I mean, for us, it's very strongly linked. And the reason why we run BimaLab is very much around solutions for resilience, right? And so a lot of the startups on this call, you'll find are either targeting, we have a very strong inclusion element to BimaLab. And so are targeting underserved communities, the agricultural, smallholder agricultural space, healthcare, and so on. So you'll find that there tends to be a general trend in that direction. But a lot of what we do is around building resilience within the African continent through solutions built by insurtechs. And so you just alluded to the economic situation right now. And also alluded to the fact that insurance is always one of the first to go. If you were in any of these founders' shoes today, and like you said, we know financially what the global landscape looks like right now, and it doesn't help with what's happening in Ukraine, and what's happening in the Middle East only makes it tougher. If you were in the shoes of any founder right now, what are the 3 top of mind things that you would be thinking of at this point in time towards still growing and scaling your organization, given that we always have a lens on resilience?
Interesting. Okay, so I'll just give a quick context. Because the Prudential is predominantly a life insurance business. We do have 2 markets where there is health being driven as one of the core businesses. But for the most part, we steer away from general insurance. So this is important that my response gives that context, because general insurance has got many, many opportunities. If you look at some of the things that are happening out there, there's things that, people using drones for assessments and so on and so forth. From where I'm sitting, and this is the age-old discussion around this innovation. Solve a problem. Solve someone's problem, and you've got a market. So from where I'm sitting, if I was to think of some of the things that I would want done or want to do, I know insurance companies are struggling with the 2 things I spoke about earlier on: customer acquisition and operational efficiencies. So solutions that come into that particular space will definitely find an open door in any insurance company, especially if you do understand what the operations are all about, how they operate in their businesses. So that is one of the key things that I'll be looking to try and achieve. And again, I'm just speaking from where I am right now, still new in this particular space. But if whatever you'll be talking to as an insurtech, you'll be speaking to those 2 things, that would get the ear of any CEO, of any executive in any insurance company: reduction of operational costs and increasing customer acquisition and driving revenue. So it's about being able to look in that particular space. Now, granted, that means you've got to do some homework to understand more about how the insurance businesses work in the different insurance spaces out there. But that is one of the things you just got to just dig your head in and just find out what the problems are and go from there. And don't forget, also solving customer concerns, making it easier for customers to get insurance is also an area that you definitely be solving a problem. A, for the customer, and twofold for the insurance itself, the traditional insurance company. So that's what I could say right now at this point in time.
And I think you'll be happy to know that a number of people on this call are doing either or both. And so for me, it presents huge opportunities in terms of being able to partner and really create win-win partnerships with insurance carriers. I think that there's certainly a lot of room for that. So thank you for that. Okay, so I'm gonna see if there's anybody with an additional question before we wrap up the call. We're in the last 5 minutes anyway of our call. I see Pazion is, he says he's in a place where he cannot talk, so I'm gonna read out his questions. So he says, Pazion is from Ethiopia, Peter, and he says, I have a digital health company currently developing a health insurtech product for the insurance companies. I have 2 questions. What are the biggest challenges that Prudential faces when it comes to providing health insurance to its customers? And 2, how does Prudential currently manage and analyze health data to make informed decisions and enhance its insurance offerings? And I think I just want to add context to Pazion's question there. I think particularly on the second one, it'll be interesting to hear some of the, you mentioned it earlier, some of the steps you're taking in terms of data and how you utilize and, what strides you're making across that in terms of turning, Prudential into really a data-driven decision-making organization. So over to you, Peter.
So I think I alluded to that just now, that predominantly a life insurance business. But there are 2 markets that have that. And one of them is Uganda and the other one is Zambia. And one of the challenges, and again, this is one of the areas that I will be venturing into. We're just looking to onboard a core insurance application in Uganda that's similar to what's being used in Zambia. Fraud is one of the key issues that I constantly keep hearing, and solutions that would help curtail that or be able to reduce that is obviously one of the key areas that I do know our risk and compliance team are constantly looking at in a particular space. So it's about being able to ensure that you're able to, first of all, know your customer, ensure that whenever they're getting services, you know exactly who is getting the service, and the hospitals are not colluding with the middle people and the customer to defraud the insurance company. So that's one of the key areas that I have just seen from afar. I haven't had an opportunity to deep dive into that particular area. I've been focusing on some of the life businesses right now, but that's one of some of the things that I keep seeing in the reports that come across my desk are some of the issues that are being focused on when it comes to health insurance. I'll be happy to come back maybe in a year's time or further down the road to engage further with this team and anybody else that's going to be coming through there. When I've seen more, I've learned more of what's going on and gotten more into the businesses to understand some of the key things that are there and where the opportunities could lie. At the end of the day, as a transformation, running the transformation arm, it's about being able to see how we can transform and change the businesses for the better. And again, it boils out to those 2 things: customer acquisition and reduced operational costs. But to your question around health, yeah, that's what I can share as of right now. I did mention that we've not actually gotten to the stage where we're going to start really implementing our data lake and start getting analytics in that particular space. But that's an area that I'm definitely driving towards once I get over this hurdle of getting the core applications in place. I see Gideon has his hand.
Yes, Gideon. So thank you. I think you addressed Pazion's question. We'll hand over to Gideon and then we'll wrap up the call. Gideon, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm a bit under the weather, but I'm fine. I'll be fine.
Get well soon.
Thank you. So, Peter, thank you for your time too. So my question is, how have you dealt with rejection in the line of your career? For instance, when you were with the airline industry, trying to get partnership and all of that, how did you deal with, if you ever experienced that, rejection or, cold feet? You are actually trying to get partnership and it's not that you've been rejected, but you could realize that there is something actually not going on for this partnership thing to sail through. Have you experienced such a thing and how do you deal with it?
Now, when you say rejection, are you talking about partnering with a smaller company or a tech company? Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah.
So you're talking about rejection from the airline's perspective?
Okay, so maybe the word as not rejection, but you're not getting the kind of response you were actually expecting from the partner or the insurance company or the airline company where you were trying to partner or something like that?
Okay, so I think that cuts across many different facets, and again, I've also learned that over the years, where when you're getting into a project or into an engagement, the proverbial story, if we're both looking at a tree from different angles and you ask to draw it, everybody's going to draw something slightly different. Yes, it's a tree, but it's not exactly what each person is seeing. And understanding and ensuring that the two parties are very clear on what the objectives are and what each party is expecting out of that partnership is critical. So the time has to be taken to the proverbial sharpen the axe, to really understand what it is that we're trying to achieve and articulate it and document it, so that becomes very clear. I've gone through a number of issues in the past where, yes, the partnerships didn't work, we had to take a step back, lost potential revenue came through because we did not launch the product in time or launch the solution in time. So lost opportunity was in there, but you've got to sit down and make sure that the understanding is crystal clear. And that is why I think earlier on when Tonya asked me about my team, the business analysts, and getting a really skilled business analyst is very important, because an analyst looks at the solution, looks at the problem, looks at what is trying to be achieved, and also understands what the customer wants. The customer could be anybody. It could be an internal customer. It could be a partner, to make sure that there's alignment and you get everything documented and make sure that things are there. Because, yeah, there's many solutions that just don't get to see the light of day, because the vision of what was needed and what was expected was very, very different from two different people. Humans are inherently different people and different entities, different animals. And it's about ensuring that people are very crystal clear, and you document it on dotted lines. So you make sure that this is exactly what is needed, what is required, and this is what is not. I used to laugh at those clauses of what is not covered. I used to laugh at that, like, well, what are you talking about? What's not covered? Because those are some of the things that come out as being problems down the road, to ensure that it's crystal clear. And you will never get everything 100% right, but it's about getting as much of it together in that particular space. So get your analysts, get an analyst in there. If you're working with an insurance company or any other company, make sure there's an analyst, a qualified analyst in the room that is going to take the time, using the methodology of understanding what the requirements are, and then documenting them and make sure everybody understands. Take the time to do that, or else you'll definitely have problems. I see Jean has.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Did I answer your question? I'm curious, Gideon. Did that answer your question?
Yes, you did. You know, I haven't gotten to that stage yet, but I think as a founder and somebody who is trying to get partnership, there could be a time where you meet, let's say, an impediment in such a situation, and how to go about it is what I was actually trying to gather. And you made mention of a business analytics or analysis or something. You made mention of something like that, and I think it will be helpful. I have my team. I do have such knowledgeable people as well, but you know, we have to weaponize ourselves well in order not to get into that kind of situation. So I was trying to also gather knowledge from your angle.
Yeah, I mentioned a business analyst, a BA. That's a very
business
important
analyst. Yeah.
Right, a qualified business analyst should be your best friend. And then obviously, once you've gathered all the information, ensure the project management methodology is taken care of. Make sure there's executive sponsorship. Somebody wants it. I've had projects fail even within my business where it was deemed an important project, but there was no executive sponsorship, or the sponsor was not vested in it. And yeah, I've burnt my fingers enough times. So one of the things I can tell you for free, I would never engage in a project if there's no exec sponsorship, or if I feel that the exec sponsorship is not steadfast, I would stop that project. I would not progress with it. Save yourself the hassle and take care of that. So BA, project management, exec sponsorship. And if you've got a good project manager, they will definitely capture the fact that the sponsorship is either there or it's not there, and where the risks are. That risk log becomes very important.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jean had.
Yeah, Jean, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think my question is a little bit connected to Gideon's, but from the regulatory sort of angle. So I think from where you're seated, what could be those, how do you navigate through the regulatory bottlenecks, which perhaps can delay your launch period for your product? And so how do you really navigate through that? Because I know every time your team innovates or you come up with something new, you have to go through the regulation. And at what point do you usually engage so that you can stay ahead of, one, the regulator, but also ahead of time to make sure that you have your product launched in time without regulation definitely affecting you that much? Because I know where you're playing, there's a lot of regulation, and regulators sometimes can be very interesting, especially if you innovate something which you do not which they do not understand. But also when it comes to partnerships, what kind of bottlenecks do you still go if you know that, yes, I have this InsurTech which is great and powerful in helping you either in the front office or middle office or back office? What things do you do to ensure that you can accelerate the relationship, or to accelerate them to make sure that the regulator does not come and stop you from taking over that opportunity and partnering with such an institution? Thank you.
Thanks, Jean. The answer, you actually talked about the answer just now, and that is about engaging early. You've got to engage early with any regulator. I also came from a highly regulated industry, the aviation industry. And I'll just tell you, you have got to approach them early with the idea, be able to paint that picture, show the value to the customer, show that you're not trying to bypass or shortchange the customer. Those are some of the things you've got to make sure that you're able to articulate. And this is a general statement for any regulator out there. It can be difficult, but don't think that you're going to go last minute to the regulator and get an approval very quickly, especially on something complex, a complex partnership that is touching on the customer. That is definitely going to be a challenge. And then again, regulators are different across all the different markets. They all have different things that they're trying to ensure that they're protecting, or they're trying to ensure that they're controlling. So it's about being able to make sure that you approach them really early. And don't forget, regulators are also driven by people. It's people behind the regulator. So it's about being able to, I'm not talking about creating relationships with them, that can be frowned upon, but ensure that you're talking to them regularly and make sure that they fully understand what it is you're trying to achieve, especially if it's trying to solve a problem. But I will say, I mean, in many instances, the relationship between the brokers, the agents, and the regulator and the insurance can be muddied from what I've seen in different industries as well, not just the insurance. But make sure that you are sharing your information really early, and you start to sensitize them ahead of time. There's no bypassing some of the key things that are needed. And the regulator can stop your solution at launch date. If you don't get that approval, you're not going to launch it. So yeah, you got to be careful about that particular area and really engage early. I think you talked about it anyways. It's about early engagement.
I think that's good advice. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And touched on the regulators, the brokers, the whatnots, and so on. Richard has a really interesting question that he's typed into the window, which will be our last question for the day. And he says, going digital does mostly address the issues of customer acquisition and reducing operational costs. However, it has casualties as well: agents, brokers, middlemen. And you've experienced this in the airline industry too. Is the current structure of traditional insurance with middlemen sustainable, in your view? and thinking long term, should innovations of insurtechs really factor in these middlemen, or is this, one of those prime spaces for innovation? So your view on that as we wrap up the call.
That's a really good question. Is it sustainable? It all depends on what the customer wants, okay? And again, the factors of macroeconomic issues, middle class growing. Let me tell you something, Richard, from what I am seeing. Things are changing. Based on what I've seen in the more advanced markets, things are changing. Customers are not coming directly to buy their own products, whether through digital aggregators or directly to the insurance company. That is there. But there are some products that are quite complex. And here in Africa, we don't have very many complex products, other than potentially South Africa and parts of Northern Africa. But as you start getting more and more complex products, there's always going to be a need to have someone explain it, unless the customer starts understanding some of these key things. So it's going to be an evolution, because even in the advanced markets, there is still a space for the middlemen. There's still a space for everyone. And I think there's one thing I didn't answer earlier on when I talked about solving problems was, as an insurance company, yes, costs and a customer acquisition. But if you could also find a solution for the middleman, that would also be powerful. And they're there and they've got access to the customers. If you can ensure them that you're not going to take that information and run away with it, then you definitely have a home to be able to deliver. But unfortunately, once that data leaves the middleman and comes to you, you now become more powerful. And I'll tell you something, they'll guard that information really, really well, which is what we've been able to observe from where we are. But there is an evolution happening, but this industry, through regulation, is, if you ask me, it's regulation that's holding it back. If you ask me, from my humble opinion, it's not a prudential opinion, it's Peter's opinion from where I'm sitting. Regulation tends to hold things back. But if you talk to the middlemen, I can assure you, you'll find a way of being able to grow. If you come with a solution for them, you'll grow very quickly if they can trust you.
Thank you.
I don't even answer the question. Let's just get around some of these comments.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those questions that, there's no wrong or right answer. We can only speculate. So I think you answered it very well. I'm one of the believers in what you just said, particularly the second half of your response around, there really is an opportunity here, either to build solutions for the middlemen, or actually, to a large extent, also just kind of cut out the middleman. I don't know, it depends on which way you want to look at it. But the one thing that's for sure is that there is an evolution happening here. And I think that over the next few years, we start to see how that evolves and what it looks like.
No, thank you. That's very, very true.
Good. Okay, so I think we're at the end of our call. I want to say, Asante Sana, thank you very much, Peter, for your time today, for thinking out loud with us, sharing some of your views, some of your opinions, and sharing, and being generous enough even to say, you can reach out and, as Prudential, if you're checking these two boxes for us, you're solving a problem for us, which in your case means either reducing costs or increasing revenue, you're open for business. I think that that's really wonderful. I want to say thank you very much to the cohort for taking the time out of your Tuesday evening. Particularly, I'm so sorry to the Kenyan folks and to you as well, Peter. It's actually a public holiday in Kenya today, and we took your time in the evening, but we keep moving forward. There's no rest for the wicked. We're going to be fine. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic evening. For the cohort, we'll see you next week, Tuesday. Please remember to book your time with our coaches. I don't think that there's any reason why you're not running and kind of locking in your time with them, but we'll see you next Tuesday. We don't have a session this week on Thursday because we're moving into one-to-one personalized coaching for the last bit of this cycle. So please remember that. Please book your time, and we'll see you on Tuesday next week. Thank you very much. And thank you, Peter.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. All the best. Good luck.